So how many of us have ever had an idol or somebody we looked up to that stumbled and fell from glory? An athlete that you might have liked, a politician, a friend, maybe even a parent. You always looked up to and they fell. They did something that you just couldn't believe they did. While growing up, one of my favorite athletes, and I'm going to age myself, but O.J. Simpson was one of my idols. I looked up to him. I mean, I was little, and he was a good running back. And look what happened to him. He fell off that idol, or off that podium that I had put him on. In today's story, we see David doing the same thing. Here's David, who is the king of Israel, and he has done something very, very bad, very wrong, going against anything and everything I think God would want him to. But David has the heart of God. So what went wrong here? Why did David suddenly, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about David dancing to what David is doing now. So let's just kind of look at the text and see what was going on and why did David do the things that he did. Well, actually, we don't even have to go into the text. Well, it is part of the text. Because what did Samuel say about what, if Israel wanted a king, what would that king do? God told Samuel, you don't want a king. This king's going to take everything from you. He's going to tax you. He's going to take your money. He's going to take your wives. He's going to send your women, or your sons and husbands to war. That's what we see David doing. But the one thing that we read in the very first paragraph, what did David, when he sent his troops out in the war to fight this battle, what did David do? Where was David? He was at home. He wasn't going to follow his troops. So number one, David is in the wrong place. In the military, we always talk about being in the right place, the right time, the right uniform. Well, David here was not in the right place, the right time, and definitely not the right uniform. David stayed home. He wasn't with his troops, wasn't with his army. He's lounging on his roof, taking a nap, rising from his nap and looking around, and what did he see? Saw Bathsheba taking a bath and thinking, oh, she's a beautiful lady. I'm king. I've got the power. Send her up to me. Strike number two. David abused his power as the king by taking this woman and being with her. And then we see what David does after this. Bathsheba finds out she's pregnant. David knows, oh no, I'm in trouble now. How am I going to resolve this issue? Oh, I'll bring her husband back, Uriah, and for 3 days, and well, he can go be with her, and then everything will be solved. Uriah was an honest man. In the military, when you're out in the field and if you're called back, you don't want to go and party it up because your troops are still out in the field. Uriah knew this, and he wasn't going to go party it up and go be with his wife when his troops couldn't be. Because that's not the right thing to do. So he didn't. David tried to do that twice to him. Then David got him drunk, saying, oh, go drunk and go be with your wife. And he refused. He did the right thing. But what happened to him? Death sentence. David's like, well, you're not fixing my problem, so I'm going to just send you off. I'm going to call your head commander and have you sent forward and killed. And that's what happened. David, wrong place, wrong time, and wrong uniform. And with David, there was death, deception. And this is a man after God's own heart. This is the man that would eventually become the line of Jesus. His son would be Solomon, whose mom was Bathsheba. So something good came out of it. Next week we'll talk a little bit more about this, that David actually gets redemption, and David owns up to what he did. So then we go into our next story when Jesus is with his disciples, and he sees that there's people that are hungry. Jesus was in the right place, the right time, and the right uniform. Jesus fed those that were hungry, that were seeking him. And he performed a miracle by taking this food that was not very much, and they said 5,000 people, but most likely that was 5,000 males. So if you add the wives and the kids, there's probably estimating over 10,000 people, if not more, at that meeting that day. And Jesus took a simple fish and bread. He even asked his disciples, what should we do? And his disciples were like, I don't know. This is something that's out of our hands. We need 6 months' wages to be able to feed all these people. And Jesus said, get the young boy, bring it up, and let's feed him. What happened? He fed him. And what happened after they fed him? Was all the food gone? No. There were still 12 baskets left. Now, 12, isn't that significant? Where have we heard 12 before? 12 disciples, 12 tribes of Israel. The numbers, there's significance with these numbers that we're seeing. So with Jesus, we see life. Life-giving with abundance. When Jesus gives, he doesn't just give what we need, he gives more than what we need. With David tried to party with Uriah. Uriah wouldn't do what he wanted, so he killed him. With David, we got death and murder. But the good thing is, with Jesus, we get life. Life-giving abundance that goes beyond any of our imagination. And God shows us these stories throughout all of Scripture. And David was a man out of God's heart. He chose Moses. Was Moses perfect? Moses didn't even want to take the position that God had given him. He goes, I can't speak. I can't do this. But God chose him anyway. Then we have Saul, who became Paul. Saul was a bad dude. He was out killing and arresting Jews. He was there when Stephen was stoned to death and probably cheered it on. God chooses people that always aren't the ones we think they should be or what they're going to be. Next week, we're going to read more about what happens after David comes to realization what he had actually done. But that's for next week, so to be continued on that one. So how does that relate to us today? How does these two stories relate to our walk with Christ? One thing, we need to be certain we are in the right place at the right time with the right uniform. If we see a temptation happening like David, do we walk and continue to be tempted? Or should we, like David, should he have walked away? Because I think every day we are tempted. We turn on the TV or whatever it may be. It may be alcohol. It may be buying stuff. It may be our job. Our eyes pick up on something. Because our eyes are very powerful. And when we see something and we want it, we go after it. And that's what David did. We need to stop and say, well, do I really need this? And when I step into the situation, Like David stepped in with Bathsheba, is this going to come out the way that I want it to? But also remembering that Jesus, looking at what Jesus did, Jesus was in the right situation, and he saw what the right thing was to do, and he did it. There is so many things going on in our church right now where we are doing a lot of good things. But like David, we need to be careful that we don't overdo it. Or see things that we think are going to be good, but could potentially take us down the wrong road. He also talks in the John text, talks about taking time and going to be with God. When we go to be with God and recharge our energy, recharge our batteries, and we get back into the Word, that's when we know that what teaches us not to be like David, when we see temptations, to walk away. When we get so tired and we're so wore out by everything that we're doing in our lives, it's easy to see something and be tempted and just to go with it. But when we're into the Word and we're studying studying God's Word in our Bible studies or our pub theology, or whatever new things were coming up, that's what builds us up and tells us where to be at the right time in the right place, in the right uniform. It's not easy. This walk that we are on takes a lot of discipline. Takes a lot of time discerning why are we on this walk. Why do we do this? Why do we go to Camp Hope on a day when it's 90 degrees out and you're sitting over the steamy vegetables and you're wondering, why am I doing this? Then I'm reminded of what Jesus did on the mountain. And he fed the 5,000. That we're there doing the work of Jesus Christ. We were in the right place at the right time. And it's good for us to be at Camp Hope when it's 90 or 100 degrees out, because we get a taste of those that are out there every day. And Glennis was there. She knows. It was hot out there, wasn't there, on Wednesday? But it was good for us to be able to experience that. There's a lot of work we can do, and we need to continue to do that. But at the same time, we need to find time to take rest. Because we do have a lot of things planned. But if we don't stop and take a rest as well, we are going to be more like David and stumble trying to find our way. So that's what we need to find out and ask ourselves and each other. And that's why we're as a family. So when we do start stumbling or being more like David, we have our family members here that say, Pastor Dirk, you're going down the wrong path. Don't go. That's Bathsheba. Get back here. We don't want you to. No, don't do that. We don't want you to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Jesus had his 12 disciples. The disciples had Jesus to help each other when the things were going not the way it should have been. But we also need to continue to focus on Jesus, because Jesus is the one that's going to teach us to do the right thing and show us what needs to be done. Are we going to stumble? Yes. Are we going to make mistakes? Yes. Are we going to continue to be followers of Christ and continue to do his work? Absolutely. So as we continue to plan for our future, let us continue to put our eyes on Christ, who brings life, who didn't die like David, and shows us how to live our lives. And most importantly, he does it with abundance. And when we are following him, then we give abundance to other people, whatever that might be. What I look for is an abundance in God's love. Because when people experience God's love and abundance, it's nothing like anything else you'll ever experience. And that's what I hope and I dream for Selah United Methodist Church to be is a church that shows the abundance of God's love to everyone that we come in contact with. And as long as we remember that we're in the right time, right place, and right uniform, and keep our eyes on Jesus, we will do that. Amen.